Korea was previously under Japanese rule, but after the Japanese surrender in World War II, it was divided into two parts. The Soviet Union occupied the area north of the 38th parallel, and the United States occupied the area south until 1948. The two countries had different ideas of how society and government should function. Eventually, North Korea wanted to reunite the countries under communist rule. The UN asked countries to send military aid to North Korea. 16 countries sent troops and 41 sent equipment or aid. China sided with North Korea and sent them military equipment. The U.S. sent about 90% of the troops that were sent to aid South Korea. Almost all male U.S. citizens who are 18 through 25 are required to register with Selective Service. The Selective Service system drafted 1.5 million men, 18 to 25, during the Korean War. 1.3 million volunteered, primarily Navy and Air Force. Commanding officers increased tenfold from 0.15% during each World War to nearly 1.5% during Korea.
And on June 1950, the year we graduated from high school, the North Koreans invaded the South Koreans. The United Nations voted to protect South Korea, and all the nations, free nations in the world, bound together. The U.S. was primarily, they had the majority of troops over there, and they landed in South Korea and fought off the North Korea. My part in, I was at the cathedral, got out, and we were all subject to the draft. You could go in the Army for 2 years, you could get a deferment to go to college, but you have to serve after that for 2 to 4 years, depending upon what you did. Or else you could get in and get it over with. That's what a bunch of fellows and I decided to join the Navy, and that was for 4 years, 4 long years. But I was on the same ship for 4 years, and I got on as a deck force guy, chipping paint and all that stuff, and red leading to keep it from rusting. And then I struck, they call it there, for a sonar. So I went to sonar school, electronics, and became a sonarman there. There were 8 of us aboard. I finally ended up as a first-class petty officer, which is equivalent to a staff sergeant in the Army. Here was the ship I was on for 4 years. The destroyer, USS Thomas, DDR 833. It was fast down the Philippines. My station was right here, below the water line. The sonar, we searched for submarines and water mines that were floating around. The mounts here are 3-inch in diameter. They could fire a 50-pound projectile 9 miles at full speed and hit targets 9 miles away from the coast. They would identify through plane jets going over where there was massing enemy troops, and we would fire at them, and the planes would go over and determine if we got them, if we had to shoot somewhere else. So we did that. We call it full speed, the beat bomb line on the full speed. But they weren't very good gunners. One of them did hit the fantail of the ship, but just put a big dent in it, left nobody was hurt. But we would zigzag all the way along the coast and do what damage we could. And then we would tailgate the aircraft carriers. So Navy pilots would come on. Sometimes they couldn't make it. They'd fall in the ocean, and we would go over and pick them up.
How old were you when you joined the military?
I was just turned 19.
Okay. Did many cathedral graduates join the military with you?
Oh yeah, it was either that or get a deferment, or else get drafted. So a lot of them went to the Air Force and Navy rather than the Army. They thought they had a better chance of living by the end of it.
Many cathedral graduates joined the military?
Yeah, an interesting story about me, if you don't mind. Yeah, quite a few did. And I was at Butler at the time, and there was a bunch of students out there, and a bunch of guys throughout the city. About 40 guys were going to quit school or quit work and go into the Marines. And one guy was named Andy Jacobs. And Andy Jacobs became a congressman later on. But anyhow, I was going to quit Butler and go into the service. The Korean War was going on. And word got to Coach Tony Hinkle, he was my coach at Butler, that I was going to quit Butler and go into the service. So he contacted a student on campus and says, get a hold of Tom O'Brien. I want to talk to him. And I got thinking, what's Coach Hinkle want to talk to me about? I never got in trouble or anything. And so whoever it was got a hold of me, so I went over to the field house and knocked at Coach Tony Hinkle's door, and he said, come on in. He called everybody kiddo. Come on in, kiddo. So I went in there, and he was shown. He coached football, basketball, and baseball, was athletic director, did all those activities. So he asked me, he says, sit down, I want to talk to you. And I got thinking, oh guys, I didn't do anything wrong. I didn't get in trouble. So anyhow, he said, what's this I hear you're going to leave school and go into the service? I said, yes, Coach. I'm pretty sure I'm going to do that. He looked up over his glasses in the paper. He looked at me. I can't use the word he said. He said, you keep your rear in school. And he says, when you graduate, you can go into the service. He said, you stay in school. He said, I just spent 5 years in the Navy. You stay in school. So I walked back to the campus. I got thinking about it. So I stayed in the school. And it was the best advice I ever got, because the guys that I was going into service with went to Korea. A couple of them got killed. A lot of them got shot up, wounded, and all that. So that was good advice for me. So I was like,
People, they say it's forgotten war, and it shouldn't be, because it was a terrible thing. The Korean people lost 2.5 million in the war, one way or another. There were 900,000 Chinese killed, 36,000 American boys killed, with 100,000 wounded. So it was a very terrible thing.
The Korean War was relatively short but exceptionally bloody. Nearly 5 million people died, half of which were civilians. This rate of civilian casualties was higher than World War II's and Vietnam's. Almost 40,000 Americans died in action in Korea, and more than 100,000 were wounded. This has never been a peace treaty, so the Korean War has technically never ended.
And finally, how do you think the Korean War affected Cathedral?
Affected me.
Cathedral as a whole, the school.
Well, there was a lot of Cathedral graduates from maybe 1948 into the 50s that were in service during the Korean War. I know one kid was underclassman, Sonny Kirkhoff, was drafted. He joined the Navy, and he was in training in the Gulf of Mexico. And he played basketball at Cathedral. He had to ditch, and something went wrong with his plane. He died. He drowned in the Gulf of Mexico. So there was a bunch of, almost everybody served.
Finally, how do you think the Korean War affected Cathedral?
probably, it's hard for me to really say, not too much. I just think, Cathedral's a great school. Nobody likes war, or hurting people, or, killing people and stuff like that. But it was a great school. I'm sure we all said prayers for him, and everything went back pretty much normal to Cathedral being a great school, just like you guys are in a great school today.
The Korean War impacted Cathedral through the veterans who fought in the war. Many graduates of the classes of 1948 through 1950 were subject to the draft together. After the war, members from those classes maintained a strong bond through multiple class reunions over the years. The class of 1950 specifically is known to be one of the closest classes of Cathedral and donates a lot to the school.